All right, let's dive right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly epic showdown. And no, I'm not talking about a match on a tennis court or a golf green. We're talking about a showdown between two totally, completely different paths to greatness. We're going to explore the fascinating science of learning and skill development, and we'll be using two of the greatest athletes of all time to figure out exactly how we should be navigating our own careers, our hobbies, and honestly, our lives. 10,000. It's a massive number, right? And, well, it represents a rule we've all been told time and time again. The prevailing wisdom in our culture is that to achieve true greatness, we absolutely must specialize as early as humanly possible. We're told to pick our lane, put our heads down, and log 10,000 hours of highly focused, deliberate practice. From a very young age, the message is that early specialization and relentless repetition is basically the only real formula for success. It's a deeply ingrained idea, and it completely shapes how we educate our kids, how we train employees, and even how we view our own potential. But this brings us to a massive counterintuitive mystery. What if everything we've been taught about that 10,000-hour rule is completely wrong for most of the things we actually do? I mean, think about the prodigy myth we see in movies or read about in biographies. Now ask yourself this. Is the hyper-focused, early specialization Tiger Woods path actually a terrible model for navigating the real world? It's a pretty shocking thought, isn't it? We're so conditioned to worship the early starter, but today, we're going to completely pull the rug out from under those assumptions. Section 1, the Tiger Woods myth. So let's look closely at this first famous archetype, because it is the ultimate, undisputed example of hyper-early specialization. Tiger Woods was literally holding a putter when he was 7 months old. Think about how utterly extreme that early start actually is. Before he could even form a complete sentence, before he could run without falling over or, tie his own shoes, he was physically holding the tool of his future trade. And this anecdote perfectly validates our deep-seated societal beliefs about early practice. We hear about a 7-month-old with a golf club who grows up to be a global, generational icon, and we instantly think, aha, that's exactly what it takes. Start at birth, focus entirely on one thing, and never, ever deviate. Section 2, the Roger Federer path. Now, let's execute a sharp pivot here. We've got two diametrically opposed childhoods. On one hand, we have the ultimate early starter, Tiger Woods, holding a golf club at 7 months old, representing absolute laser focus from day one. On the other hand, we have tennis icon Roger Federer, whose childhood was defined by dabbling in diverse sports before specializing incredibly late in the game compared to his peers. We're looking at two totally opposite paths, opposite mentalities, opposite training regimens, yet both men achieve the absolute pinnacle of athletic greatness and historical dominance. So how in the world is that possible? To really understand Federer's success, we need to look at exactly what Roger was doing instead of just hitting thousands upon thousands of tennis balls. He wasn't locked on a single court. He was playing tennis, yes, but he was also skiing, wrestling, playing soccer, and even skateboarding. This was a wildly diverse period of dabbling, and it served a massive purpose. He was skiing to develop elite balance, wrestling to understand leverage and physical resistance, playing soccer for footwork, and skateboarding for immense spatial awareness. He was trying entirely different physical movements and testing different tactical strategies across completely different sports. He wasn't logging 10,000 hours in tennis right away. He was bouncing around, experimenting, and cross-training his brain. Section 3, kind versus wicked environments. To understand exactly why both of these totally different paths exist, and why one is actually drastically better for the modern world, we have to look at the core science. Let's define what we mean by a kind environment. This is a setting with clear, totally unchanging rules. When you take an action, you get immediate, highly accurate feedback. Golf and chess are perfect examples of this. In golf, the ball is perfectly still, the hole doesn't suddenly shift to the left while you swing right. You take a shot, the ball goes a certain distance, and you instantly know if you hit it well or poorly. The rules of physics and the rules of the game are static. In a kind environment like Tiger's golf world, early specialization in repetitive practice pay off perfectly, because the patterns you learned at age 4 are the exact same patterns you're going to use at age 40. But then we have what's called a wicked environment. A wicked environment is a setting characterized by shifting rules, totally unclear goals, and feedback that's either horribly delayed or just flat out inaccurate. Think about navigating a career, leading a team, or launching a business. You might launch an amazing new product, but a competitor pivots the next day. A new technology suddenly disrupts your entire industry, and consumer tastes just change overnight. The rules change constantly. What worked 5 years ago might completely ruin you today. And when you make a major strategic decision, you might not find out if it was a good one until months or even years later. The unpredictable real world is an intensely wicked environment. It's absolutely nothing like a perfectly manicured golf course. So the crucial takeaway here is the stark contrast between these two learning environments. In a kind environment, your rules and goals are perfectly clear and unchanging, and your feedback is immediate and accurate. But in a wicked environment, which, let's face it, is where the vast majority of us actually live, work, and innovate, the rules and goals are constantly shifting and entirely unclear. Plus, the feedback you rely on is delayed or inaccurate. Preparing for a kind environment requires a totally different strategy and a totally different mindset than preparing to survive and thrive in a wicked one. Section 4. The power of sampling. Now consider this absolutely beautiful concept. A diverse sampling period of different activities allows people to build broader general skills. This explains exactly why Roger Federer's method worked so spectacularly well. By dabbling in wrestling, soccer, skiing, and skateboarding, he was immersing himself in a sampling period. He wasn't just wasting time or delaying his inevitable tennis career. He was actively building a vastly broader base of athletic, spatial, and tactical skills. When you try a bunch of different things, you build a much stronger, more robust, and more adaptable foundation. And that broad foundation, that's what allows you to pivot effortlessly when the rules of the game inevitably change on you. So, how does this actually play out in practice? Well, it's a brilliant logical progression. First, you dabble in diverse activities, intentionally embracing that sampling period. Because you're exploring widely, you then build broader general skills, rather than narrow, hyper-specific ones that might just become obsolete. Then, and this is where the absolute magic happens, you begin to integrate knowledge across completely different domains. You take a leadership lesson from coaching Little League and you apply it to a massive corporate merger. Or you take a lesson from classical art and apply it to intuitive software design. Finally, this cross-pollination and integration is what creates truly impactful, real-world innovations. A chaotic-looking, wandering path actually builds the ultimate foundation for massive success. Section 5. Winning in the real world. Here is the absolute crucial takeaway you need to remember from this whole explainer. The most impactful real-world innovations are increasingly made by people who integrate knowledge across completely different domains. Mixing different ideas, experiences, and hobbies isn't a distraction from your main goal. Actually, it's your biggest superpower in a wicked world. The people who change the world, the ones who disrupt industries and solve the absolute hardest problems, they aren't usually the ones who spent 10,000 hours staring at a single isolated problem. They're the ones who looked completely outside their field, drew fascinating connections that no one else saw, and brought entirely fresh interdisciplinary perspective to the table. So I want to leave you with this really powerful, lingering question to think about long after this explainer finishes. Are you currently trapped on a golf course, desperately trying to apply perfectly static rules to a messy, unpredictable life? Or are you actively embracing a sampling period, trying totally new things and building the wonderfully diverse skills you actually need to thrive in your own wicked environment? Go out there, try something completely different today, and start building your own superpower. Thanks so much for joining me to explore the science behind this, and keep learning.